the larger society.
Focused on our education, obeyed the law, went to church.
Put our heads down, worked very hard, and then we would reap the rewards of those things.
They expected us to go to school, college, even university. They expected us to have jobs and to own houses. They actually expected that. Now, later in life, as you looked at the challenges of British society, you think, where did our parents get those expectations from?
There was this sort of split about who we were as black teenagers, and particularly that idea of black British teenagers, and what our relationship was with our parents and the West Indian front room that inhabited so much of who they were.
For us as young people, seeing these kind of artificial things, questioning their authenticity, was traumatic, because we felt we were trying to find something that was authentic for us in terms of our identity. Why did they kind of look up to this blue-eyed blonde Jesus? What was so fascinating about him? Why did they identify with him? Given all the fact of what was going on outside in this society. What we wanted, in a sense, was things that were real, that spoke to us, that were relevant. And we felt what was going on in the front room wasn't relevant anymore. We wanted to see kind of, whether it be Malcolm X on the wall, or Martin Luther King, or Muhammad Ali. We wanted to see these black symbols. We wanted to see some sense of black consciousness. So it's not that the front room changed so much aesthetically, it's that its meaning changed for us.
The second generation were to discover something meaningful in a new music which spoke volumes to them.
What was happening at that time that came through the radio and came through the radiogram seemed to something we could identify with.
Music certainly informed that sense of who we were.
Bob Marley, Rastafari, all of those spoke something about the condition we as black British young children born here was expressing.
Let me go now. To let me go was not them intention. One nigga.
What the hell you all doing?
Imagine taking that music home. You know, there you are, you know, talking about Charting Down Babylon and Jah Rastafari, or James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud.
I would be turning the radiogram up and loud, trying to find the bass and the treble.
Our parents would think, like, you know, what's got into our children, you know, they need to kind of tone it down and just sort of reap the rewards of kind of being here.
Turn that music down, I don't want to hear that Rasta music in the house.
I didn't want anything to do with this space, to be honest with you, because it wasn't really where I was at psychologically, you know.
The alienation felt by the second generation led to an explosive situation at the Notting Hill Carnival in 1976, when an overbearing police presence led to violent riots in the streets.
That going off, that sense of this kind of pressure cooker that had kind of built up in society, this kind of impotence of not being able to kind of express oneself, happened at the carnival when it just ignited and kind of exploded.
On one level, as a young black person, you didn't want it to happen because you knew now that all of us would be tarred with the same brush. But on another level, you quite understood how it had happened.
And I even realised in my young, ignorant days that we'd reached a different moment, and it was going to be a moment that I guess our parents, sitting back in their front rows, would have bared the brunt of it, more so than we would, because they would have had to go to work and lived with those headlines. And I guess for them, you know, they would have sat in their front room and looked at all the things that they'd achieved and felt this sense that they were kind of going to lose it. And maybe they would have thought, you know, maybe we should have stayed in the Caribbean because, you know, we certainly don't feel welcomed here, or our children have just become these other things.
To some extent, it was this new atmosphere that made the front room completely archaic.
The second generation had grown up in awe of the front room, but by the time they grew up, it had little place in their lives.
One of the biggest changes with this generation and the old generation is we're the anti-clutter movement. You know, we're into this whole thing about minimalism. We're almost rejecting those values of having possessions. Back then, you valued your possessions because they really represented something.
The traditional front room, like we older generation, they're gonna die off. I mean, when I go, these gonna go in the skip.
Can you mend a broken heart?
For us as a family, I think as time went on, 60s, 70s and 80s, I don't think our front room actually changed and adapted to the changes in society. I'd more say it was like stuck slightly in a time warp. My parents have never set foot in Habitat, they've never set foot in IKEA, and I don't think they ever will really.
My two-daughter front room is just basic. The settee, television and a coffee table. And they call my place clutter.
Anything that looks vaguely antique will not cross the threshold.
It looks so empty.